Good morning, Mike. Happy Tuesday. How you doing?
Good morning, Stephen. Stephen Todd.
Stephen.
How are you?
Stephen, very formal this morning,
Well, that's what it
Mike.
says on your Zoom window.
It does.
Stephen
I guess
Todd.
I guess that is my name, you know.
You can call me Michael.
I,
Please
I
don't.
was
No, I'm
I
kidding.
was debating whether to call you that, but I just hesitated. Well, you could call me
Only my
Todd.
mom and
Stephen.
my wife when she's really mad at me. No, even that doesn't happen.
No, Stephen is usually what references that as well. I can make the same point, but
Yeah,
yeah, I do often get called Todd though, I have to say. But as you mentioned before, the guy with two first names, you know.
that's you.
But yeah, so obviously welcome everybody to Open Source Workplace Daily.
Welcome.
Mike Petrusky and myself, and as you can see, I've got a brand new background, and
Looking
this is
good.
courtesy. Yeah, no, it's quite pleasing, and obviously, if you want to reach out to the show, here's the email to send your comments, your questions, so that we can bring that to the live show as we do it. And then two other
Very
things I
cool.
want to sort of bring up is we have these are not sponsors, and I want to make that clear. These are two companies that actually contribute to Open Source Workplace. They give their time, they share their thoughts, they share their insights, and part of my give back to those folks is to have them on this platform. And I sort of want to remind people, if you take the concept open sourced workplace and you apply it to software and anything, that's the sort of spirit with which open source workplace operates. It is all about workplace, but it's open sourced. Anybody can contribute. And when you do contribute, this is what I hope to do for people who are prepared to do things. So I just wanted to explain the sort of what this is and sort of reaffirm that this isn't a sponsorship gig. This is people who are actually giving and helping the community at this time. So this is my way of saying thank you.
Well, I am
So
shamelessly sponsoring with
I
the
know
Workplace Innovator podcast banner back here. That's just my default
it's,
setting. I'm always
I know, and
promoting
I
the
know, but then
podcast
you're
from my office.
there you go, and let's talk about that because you just announced. I saw this morning two great guests for tomorrow, which I will absolutely do all I can to tune in because Juice Sutherland, Tim Ullman, great folks, and really
Yeah.
interested to hear their opinions. Tim is opinionated in a really good way. He antagonizes. He gives a different opinion. So I'm really excited to watch that. So well done,
Well,
you.
it's a live. This is the interactive live stream every Wednesday at noon Eastern time, folks. You can join us by going to www.workplaceinnovator.com and you'll see how to get on. But you get to interact. This is a live interactive conversation. We open the microphones actually and let people share their opinions and their questions. So, what questions would you have for Tim and Joe? Anything that comes to
So
mind? I mean, this is an
no,
open
for
format. We
Tim,
don't really have an
yeah,
agenda.
yeah. No, for Tim, absolutely. Obviously, Leadsman Index is there to help and direct organizations and allow them to collect data on how their workplace is optimized, right, for productivity. That's the whole purpose of what the Leadsman Index does, and allows you to benchmark against other organizations that maybe in your industry that you can benchmark against. And obviously, there are trends that they've been able to identify as I can't remember how many hundreds of thousands of people are now part of the Leesman Index, but it allows you as an organization to trend. So obviously through this time as we go to work from home, they've released another uh, um, index for working from
Yes.
home. So I'd love to see how
Right.
those two come together and what is his thoughts about how that progresses, given a lot of the narrative around, well, this is going to continue. People will continue to work from home. So what does that look like?
Yeah, long term. That's the question I have for you is how this is impacting you long term. It's certainly beginning to weigh on me, the stress of it all. In fact, I in my opening commentary on this morning's episode of the podcast, I talked about time going super slowly or super fast, depending on the moment of the day or how it feels. And that feeling of time being unusual during this pandemic was something I read an article about. They called it the paradox of chronemics or something, chronemics
Oh,
or chronemics. Have you ever heard of this? Because it's
I
like the
have not.
study of time as a communication device. When we use the expression time flies when you're having fun, it's that type of thing. And it's that feeling that, time is a constant. There's no change in actual pace of time, but the way it feels to us changes.
Mm.
So how's it feel for you? For me, I felt like, wow, okay, I'm back on the podcast. It's Tuesday. Welcome to episode 106. it's been a week since we got together, or maybe it's been a month. It feels like a real long time since last week because so
Yeah,
much is packed
yeah.
into each day. But how about for
No,
you?
that's a great point. It's a great question, and I love that. I love that concept because yeah, we do lose all track of time. Weeks fly by. Who would have thought that working from home, time would pass so quickly? Who would have thought working from home we forget to have meals and things like that because we're so engaged in what we're doing? Time's flying by. Here we are, what, April 28th. Um, it's just so fast. And, while we look ahead and we think, oh, how long is this going to go on for? Time will fly by. But I love the question. Time for me is passing so quickly.
What
But one of
about
the
when you look
things,
backwards though? You think about we started this about a month ago, right? This
yeah,
daily
no, we did. We
live
did. Yeah.
stream. Does that seem
Yeah.
like a month or does it seem longer
It feels so
or
much longer,
short?
mate. Every day
Yeah.
talking to you. Come on, man. Come on. Of course it feels
Well,
longer. You
that,
you,
that
you open
part of it
yourself
aside,
wide up for that. You open yourself
yeah,
wide up for that. And
that
when you
was
open the
that was a,
door,
that was a softball. That was a
it
softball. Too
was, it
easy.
was, and I appreciate it. But no, it when looking back, yeah, it does seem like a long time, but at the same time, it flies by. But that's the
Yeah.
same, I think, in all time. All as we look back every time, every year, we're like, whoa, that passed quickly. Dates creep up on us ever so quickly as well. But one of the
I loved
things
it.
that
The
sort of
paradox was the word that really jumped out at me because that's something that
Of
I
course, that's
talk about a
something you
lot.
love,
It's
I
my
know,
favorite.
and
And you know that.
yeah, I know that when we did your video, we talked about the workplace paradox, how
Yes,
we talk to
last year.
different people. Yeah, we talk about to different people, and you get two sides of the coin, right? When one say one technology is great, and technology says another, and that's a perfect segment into what we wanted to talk about a little bit today. What digital fatigue. As you know, we've been discussing here the offices are designed for collaboration and accidental collisions, right? We promote that and sort of I've been discussing a little bit about, well, what happens in the virtual world. And somebody commented, and I'm going to give him a shout out, Clark Mayer, Maier,
Okay.
and he gave a counter opinion, and it was really interesting. He went through various points, but the last sentence is really what sort of stuck out to me, and I'm going to read it. There's only so much time people are willing to spend on digital interaction, and social media uses up a lot of that. And as we
Mm,
sort of think about how we behave each day through these times, um, absolutely, digital platforms, Zoom, are consuming so much time. We used to be able to go on phone calls and multitask. Not that I can multitask, but I used to try and do it. Where in a
sure.
video, you're like, you are focused, you are locked in, which is kind of draining a little bit, right?
It does.
Um,
Drains me.
yeah, and I find more and more people are more tired at the end of the week. And then on the weekends, less and less people actually spend time on social media. I don't know if you're experiencing that. I know you mentioned it briefly yesterday, and that's where it triggered, his comment. But then I went the other way, sort of like, okay, so let's think about that. Curious to know your opinion on this, and sort of one. Well, let's start with your reaction to that. What you sort of initially think.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree with Clark, was it? I think it's a
Yeah.
great comment. It's something that I've heard anecdotally people talking about these last several weeks. And I know there's some science out there to it. There's research that talks about Zoom fatigue. And it's something that I started to experience because I've always been in this digital space, but it's been on my schedule. It was my
Hmm.
kind of being able to plug in the times in which I would do webinars or conferences or I would record a podcast interview. It was always, me controlling it. Then all of a sudden it was thrust upon me, all these meetings, and it was just like meet, training, training, training. And it got really draining for me. So it is part of that overall picture of our mental health and things we're just beginning to realize. And to continue on that theme of how we manage it, and I want to hear how you manage it because you said you were tired at the end of last week, and I do it by shutting off. And it's hard for me. I don't totally shut off. I'll peek at my social media. I'll peek at the messages I'm getting on LinkedIn, and I feel this burden inside of me. I'm not sure about you. I have this obligation to reply to people, and I do it. I've gotten better on email because there's just so much junk that comes your way. You just got to tune some of it out. But on social, like somebody took the time to interact or comment on my post or comment on a podcast, I want to say thank you to them and acknowledge it. So when I see it over on the weekend, like a Saturday, something comes in, I'm like, I'm going to wait till Monday to respond to that. But then it weighs on my mind. So there's this game we play, but the emotions of it is a lot of up and downs and a lot of uh, this idea of cognitive load was something Rex Miller again mentioned last week. It was
Hmm.
in this article I talked about with the time paradox feeling. The more our minds are loaded with things that we're not used to. So we've been getting adjusted to this quarantine life, right? This work from home, the extra Zoom calls, the more digital world. And it's unusual for us in many ways. There are a lot of tasks, there are a lot of things that we've had to do to be prepared for these calls, to set up the technology. And it weighs on our minds because it adds to our cognitive load, which is the direct correlation or the causation of stress. So cognitive load equals more stress. It's when you get into a routine and you don't have to think and you just do things by habit, that's when your stress levels are lowest. So in Rex's book, The Healthy Workplace Nudge, he talks about using that principle to get people nudged slightly towards a
Mm.
healthier habit and not have to think about things. You don't have to like, I'm on a diet, I'm watching what I eat, therefore I won't eat this thing. If you get into a habit of just like, oh, there's the healthy food, it's right there, I don't have to think about it, then it helps us. So it's all tied together. It's all very interesting. And this digital overload is certainly a new area of added cognitive load for all of us. So I'm feeling it.
Yeah, no, and it was something that I hadn't contemplated. So again, I do really appreciate Clark's response and sort of bringing it to the attention. And then I went through something similar that you went through when I initially read it, and obviously I've had a little bit more time to think about it. But I sort of went, my initial thing, as I said, was to go through yours. Then I sort of thought about it more deeper. And you know me, I sort of get a question, I write it down, and I go away and I think about it, and I let it fester a little bit. And I kind of went to, yes, we do get this digital fatigue, but yet we still switch off and we go on Twitter, we go on Facebook, whatever other social media platforms. So it's right. So is it the fact that we get social media or we get digital fatigue or we get fatigue from the actual platforms that we're using at work? And do we need to take this as an opportunity to enhance those platforms, the digital interfaces with work? Do organizations need to take this as a lead and actually think about and ask themselves those questions and take the lead from those platforms to be a lot more collaborative and be a little more user friendly and want us to engage more? Because there's tasks that we do on our personal phones that come so easy but actually are somewhat of an obstacle in our work environment. So do we then have to revisit some of those tools to make it that little bit easier? And we talk about friction and frictionless, those are key terms that we like
Oh
to
yeah.
talk about in the industry. So do we have to come at it that way? And do we have to look at, okay, what is actually the tools that people do like to use that don't get fatigued? How can we replicate that in the actual workplace environment?
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, and I like the idea. I've talked about it a lot. The idea of consumerizing technology in the workplace and making it more similar to that personal technology experience we have outside the workplace. And that's something that I didn't come up with that idea, but the digital workplace definition from Gartner is where I got that over the last several years. And I get that as a potential to do a better job is what you're saying at integrating some of these tools.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but I think the challenge in this current environment, the current pandemic life we're living, is that everything's digital. So whereas before in the workplace, sneaking onto Facebook or
Mhm.
taking a look at your Twitter feed or going to LinkedIn was kind of a escape from the norm, and it was a kind of a different thing than what the routine of your work life. And now all of a sudden it's all blurred together. It's your work life is a digital life, your personal life, the fun things that used to be an escape are a digital life, and therefore there's no break. Does that
Mm.
make sense? Is that something you're
Yeah, no,
seeing?
it does.
Because it
No.
kind of, there's the fact is things like podcasts that I used to listen to for entertainment and escape are just not getting my attention anymore because it's hard for me to find that and escape anymore because so much of my life around work and listening to about COVID-19 updates and all these different newscasts we're reading, listening to and absorbing and consuming, it's taking away bandwidth from what used to be an escape for me. Am I
Yeah.
am I tracking?
No, 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 I hear you, and I appreciate it. Again, this is the great thing about talk about these things because here we have Clark who's raised an alternative opinion and alternative view, and then now you and I are able to bring ways and things to think about this that I hadn't even thought about that as well, right? Because it is, yeah, you're so right. There are things we use as escapism from the traditional work environment. People going on LinkedIn was a break from work. Going on
Yeah.
Facebook was a break from work. Where today, almost all of that is merging together and almost all feels like work. So it's a great context. It is. No, thank you for sharing, man.
I tell you though, there's a mind shift. I just read a tweet this morning. I retweeted it. Do you know James Clear? Have you heard of James Clear,
I
the
don't
author
know.
who has written books and blogs about habits? He actually, his book's called Atomic Habits, and it
Oh,
was
yes,
based on a
yes, yes,
blog.
yes. Yeah,
So I've really found a lot of his principles very practical and applicable to that same type of philosophy that Rex talks about with the healthy nudge. This is about, habit changing nudges, and it's this incremental change. 1% a day or 1% effort difference adds up over time. That the cumulative effect of making these small adjustments. Well, he tweeted this morning about mindset, and I was, me, I struggle with this, always wanting to be in the present. You tell me to stay in the present because that's where I can control things and that's where my anxiety levels are lowest. But I always am looking for data and looking to read articles and hear people's visions for what next week and next month and next year is going to look like, and when's this pandemic going to be over, and when can we get back to a new normal. So I still consume a lot of that information, and it does raise my stress levels because the more you focus on those distant things or the economic impacts and all those big picture items, the less control personally I have over it. So it gets me going anxious wise. So I was like, yesterday I had told you I had the case of the Mondays yesterday, but heading
yeah,
into today, the tweet I read was a perfect one because he said the simple way to adjust your mindset is to say, instead of I have to do this thing, I get to do this thing. Say I
right.
get to get on a live
Yeah.
stream on YouTube with Steve as opposed to I have to. It's another morning at 8 a.m. I got to get on and get dressed and get ready to go. I have to do this. It's like, hey, I get to do this.
Right.
This is a privilege. This is a real perk and a benefit to my day. So thank you.
No, that's great, and I love that. It's a little shift in a question, little shift in a word,
Yeah.
just alters the mindset. It is so wonderful. Yeah, and we were talking about yesterday, dovetailing into that a little bit. Live today, each day in day tight compartments. Live
Yep.
between the moment it is now to the time you go to bed, and don't worry about tomorrow. Right,
Yeah.
tomorrow brings enough troubles of its own. So how do you do that? How do you live that way? How do you get that mindset that actually you focus on? What is the things that you get to do today, so that you can be the best that you can be. I love it. It's great. And I see you smiling as you think about that. So it's
Yeah.
good.
Real practical advice. I mean, I
Yeah.
love practical stuff. And I think too often I drift into this philosophical, you know, place where I want to just take over everybody's thoughts and feelings and share with them that, hey, I'm struggling with this too. And I think that's clear now. I think at this point, anybody who knows me knows I'm pretty much an open book, and when I'm having a tough day, I'll not hide that too much. Although I still do. There's still this facade we all put on. And I
Yeah.
think you and I talk about this offline a little bit is we are who we are, but there's a little bit of a guard that comes up when the camera's rolling, and it has to. It's just
Yeah.
human nature, or it's just practical, you know, necessity to maintain our sanity and maybe keep our jobs, right? We always say you got to keep a certain little
Of
bit of
course.
a guardrails up. But I'm pretty much the guy you see here. I'm the guy you would talk to in real life, and I think that's pretty much a given now. So let's start talking about the stuff that I get excited about, which is positive, practical, optimistic advice, and how we do these things, because this is the new normal. This is the new reality. And I don't know where you want to go from here for the
No,
rest
no.
of
I
today's conversation, because this is what we have to do is make the best of it.
Yeah, and it dovetails nicely into a video published this morning, from Ken Van Sommer and from Boost Cognition. So he's a former pro athlete. He competed in kayaking at an elite level. He then focused on training sports athletes to one fitness, but then also cognitive function. Right, his passion is high performance, and he's
Mm,
bringing that to the workplace. And in the video, he actually takes real life examples of sporting events, sporting things that we can all relate to, and then applying that to the workplace and what we're going through right now whenever we're at home. And one thing he did say that it's a key takeaway is we need to teach ourselves to focus. We need to teach ourselves, right? You look at sports athletes, they don't just turn up and go. They actually have to get themselves in the mindset. They have to get themselves into a zone Where often at work, we kind of turn up and it's like, okay, so we don't really think about how we get in that zone. How do we get in the zone to perform? And then whenever you get in that zone to perform, how do you retreat and allow your body to recover so you can re-engage at that performance level? So it's a great video, and I encourage people to go and watch. And the examples he gave was, Formula One racing and also rugby teams,
Hmm.
people who come in as a substitute. We talk about, that pitcher at the end of the baseball game. Why
Yeah.
is it that ninth inning pitcher, the closer, is able to come in and do what that is? Or if you take a sports team that actually, be it basketball, they rotate quite a bit. If you take soccer, rugby, where actually it's a substitutions that typically come on at the end of the game, and they often have the ability to change outcomes.
Yeah.
But whenever they come on, they sometimes look short of pace, even though they're fitter and have a higher performance, physical performance than anybody else on the field, because they've been playing for 60, 90 minutes or whatever length of time that is. But cognitively, they're not at the same level as those on the field. So how do you get that cognitive function to enable you to enter the field, take advantage of your physical performance and your physical ability at that time, but cognitively, how do you get yourself right? And we take that into the workplace. We take that into the environment that we're living in now, working from home. How do we prepare ourselves? How do we ease into? How do we get ourselves right to perform whenever we need to, whenever we come to do the task that we have to do? Because many people today have to live in compartments because they've got responsibilities, be it family, be it whatever, and they also have to perform their work tasks. So how do they take those short intervals? How do they prime themselves to actually do and perform their best when they do get these opportunities to do it? It's a great insight.
How
I
do we
sort of
do
went
it? Are
on.
you going to tell me? You got me on the edge of my
Now you got to
seat.
watch.
I have
Come
to watch
on,
the video
you
with
have to
Ken.
watch it. Have to watch it.
I,
He
I
he
will
goes
do
he
that.
goes into it. He goes into it. And
Well, I
no,
remember his
please
last
do.
video. He talked about a little of those things, that
Yeah.
practical ideas around repetition. And when you're working out with weights, you do reps, right? To
Yep.
build up muscle. And that's what we do when it comes to this. I mean, the reps we do sitting in front of this screen and talking each day and staring into the camera and talking to each other and talking to the audience is something that just becomes, muscle memory, and it doesn't
Yep.
require a lot of preparation anymore. But what do you do to prepare for the day today? I know you're better and more disciplined than I, and I often
You.
will. I have habits. I'm not sure they're all good habits, but they get me where I need to be. But I do find
Yeah.
myself still falling into old habits of procrastination and not leaping into action until absolutely necessary. But I'm sure you have better routines, and your friend Jonathan Schultz has a lot of
Hmm.
good habits as well that get his
Yeah.
day started.
No, no, absolutely. And for me, it's how do I prime myself, right? Just as simple what Ken was saying. And for me, it's asking questions, asking myself questions, having a thought, writing it down, and then letting my brain mull over that. And those things can come from something I've read, a book I'm looking over, something that pops up on LinkedIn or other social media. However, that information comes to me, I write that question down, and then
Yeah.
I just think it through. And that sort of helps prime, especially for what we're trying to do here. Then when I get and actually trying to, if I know I have a sustained period of focus where I actually want to tune in and actually perform and do my work, I always use brain.fm as a tool.
You've told me about
It's
that. Yeah.
There's a free thing, and I basically just plug them in the headphones. It uses waves to alter your consciousness, and allows
Oh
you
boy.
to there's focus. And honestly, it's remarkable. So if I don't feel like doing something, but I know I have to do something, I put Brain FM on the focus setting, and within 15 minutes, I'm in the zone. It just
So it's
locks me in.
waves of noise.
So it's
Is this when
regular.
the aliens talk to you, Steve?
Potentially,
Yeah.
that could be how they get to me. Who knows? But yeah, but in essence, it's music, but then there is an undertone with waves coming through that alter and
Oh
tap
boy.
into your
Okay.
brain frequency. So I love it, and without doubt, it just never failed to put me into the zone, and
Hmm.
that's what I use. And
Wow.
it's takes 15 minutes to get into that zone, listen to this, and there's 45 minutes of high productivity, or productivity, depending on how you measure it. Um, but
Well, I listen
yeah,
to Bop by Hanson, because that song will put me in the zone when I go bop ba doo ba da ba do, oh, repeatedly over and over again. It just gets me
Okay.
into a zone.
No.
So that was my that was my recommendation last week. I happened to stumble on that song again. It was one of my favorites from the early 90s. Was that a hit in the
Mm,
UK? Where were you in 1993, Steve Todd?
1993. So whenever you say that song to me, I flash back to a specific moment in time, and it was I had just went to Manchester to go to college, and I was standing inside at Old Trafford, the stadium of my football team, and it was the first game I'd actually went to see them. Not the first time I'd ever been to Old Trafford, but the first time since I went to college.
Okay.
And it was a game against a team called Port Vale, where Manchester United played all these young kids of 17, 18-year old who later became David Beckham, Ryan Giggs, all these superstars. But this was this game. But whenever I hear that song, it takes me back to that moment.
That was
I can
playing on the
see me
speakers.
on the speakers either before the game,
Yeah.
during halftime or
It's
whatever it
it's
was.
just
But
associated now.
that's what it reminds me. That's a beautiful thing about music. I know how much you love music, but
I
you
love
hear
it.
something that takes you to those moments, you know.
Definitely.
But
Definitely. That's why I listen to
yeah.
80s music all the time. It takes me back to my teen years and my college years and some of the happiest days of my life. Not that today's not great, but boy, there was something about that carefree time where you didn't have all the responsibilities of work and life and family, and again, blessings as well, but at the same time, boy, when you're a kid, enjoy it, kids. If you're watching this, you're not watching this. If you're in college right now or a teenager, most likely you're not watching this. But those
Yes,
of
but
us who are farther
maybe
along in
they
the
should
journey
be.
know
They
what
should be.
that's like.
Yeah. But just finishing up, but
Bop,
as
ba-doo, ba-da. I'm sorry, I got distracted. We have a few more minutes
no, no,
left. You
no.
want to be
There's
productive in
few
these
more
final
minutes.
minutes?
Of
Oh,
course.
okay.
I always try to be
I will
productive.
be quiet now.
No, no, no. You don't need to be quiet. I don't like you being quiet. I get worried when you're quiet. But no, just sort of dovetailing on back into the what we've been talking about here with the digital fatigue. You know, I think as new generations come into the workforce, there will be an expectation that we have a digital platform that is as easy as what they've been used to. You know, kids at school today,
Yep.
all they use is technology, and I think we have a great opportunity as an industry, as innovators out there, you know, small startups that are looking at what can we do today? How can we take advantage of this opportunity and provide tools that are engaging, that we do want to go to, that we don't feel are intimidating or do, you know, consume all our energy and are providing valuable assets to the organization. So I think there is that. So I just want to sort of dovetail back into that as we wrap up here today.
That's a great point. I wonder if those younger generations, the Gen Z, they call them digital natives, right? I wonder if the same cognitive load that you and I, as people in our
Mm.
generation, deal with, I don't know if it's the same for them. They may be more conditioned and better prepared to manage this digital life. What do you think? I mean, is it
And I think
there's
you used the
science
right
behind that?
term.
Probably.
I'm sure there probably is, but you used the right word, conditioned, right? Humans we adapt so well. You look at this, what everyone's going through right now. This was unimaginable. And I suspect with time, we will adjust to the digital world. We
Mm,
will become conditioned, and the fatigue this will become the way of life. And we will get stressed, right? We go back to adaptation. You go to the
yeah,
gym, you're sore, you go back the next week, you're a little less sore, you can do a little bit more. And I think there will be an adaptation.
it
But yeah,
does.
it's
It makes sense. That same thing I started with. The cognitive load goes down the more we get used to it. So
mhm.
that this Zoom fatigue and the digital fatigue we're talking about will dissipate as we get more conditioned and more used to it, and we have to think less about it. It's like routine: pop the laptop open, get the settings going, everything's ready, click start, and you don't even think about it. You're on autopilot, and
Yeah,
therefore you're less stressed and less burdened by it. So I like that. That's a
yeah.
positive way to end, and that's
There you
a
go.
good way to think about it.
Productivity,
So
man. I love it. I
yes,
love it.
you did it
So
again,
look,
Steve.
thank you.
You reined me in. Thank you for that. I don't need to apologize for you today.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I always like when we go through an episode where you don't feel you need to apologize for me.
That's right.
It's good. It's good. So look, thank you. And obviously please, you know, give people, let people share this episode, give us your comments, give us your thoughts, give us your questions so that, we have things to talk about.
Point to it.
And
Hashtag
here we go. This
OSW
way.
Daily.
There we go. oswdaily@gmail.com. So Mike, thank you. Have a great day and I'll
You
chat
too,
with you
Steve.
tomorrow.
Thanks.